I showed up to my parents' family celebration banquet, dressed, early, smiling. And just as I reached for the door, I heard it. Sorry, you're not invited. Leave. I thought it was a joke, until they called security. And then my father said it, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. Get this beggar out. My name is Lana Hartley, I'm 35. And if you think I caused a scene, I didn't. I straightened my back, looked at my mother, who wouldn't meet my eyes, glanced at my sister, who smirked, and I walked away. No shouting, no tears, no curses, just footsteps. But what they didn't know was that everything they'd been celebrating, I paid for. The venue, the catering, the gold-plated invitations, the Airbnb rentals for the out-of-town uncles, even the champagne tower Mom insisted on, for aesthetic. They thought it came from my dad's retirement bonus. It didn't. It came from my account. Quietly, willingly, repeatedly. Until that moment, I got in my car, took a breath, opened my banking app, and started canceling. $7,200. Banquet catering, reversed. $12,000. Honeymoon flights for my sister, revoked. $4,800. Spa weekend for Mom and her book club, gone. $52,000. Ongoing payments on the beach condo they claimed as Dad's legacy, all under my LLC. Frozen. Effective immediately. Total damage, $76,000. By the time I reached home, I had 56 missed calls. Half from family. Half from numbers I didn't recognize. And then someone knocked at my door. Hard. I checked the peephole, and what I saw made me lock the door, slowly, silently, and grab the folder I had been waiting 3 years to use. You said. Standing outside my door was my sister's husband, red-faced, disheveled, clutching his phone like a grenade with the pin halfway pulled. You need to fix this, he barked, without so much as a hello. They just canceled the banquet food. The hotel won't release the rooms. And my honeymoon tickets got voided mid-check-in. I leaned against the frame. Strange. Sounds like someone didn't double-check who actually owned those payments. He blinked. You did this because they kicked you out? No, I said. I did this because they forgot the one rule of biting the hand that feeds you. Make sure the hand isn't holding the receipts. He glanced past me, trying to see inside. Maybe to check if our parents were there. Maybe to spot regret. But regret wasn't living here. I held up the folder. Thick. Tabbed. Color-coded. Inside. Signed contracts with my LLC listed as financial sponsor. Cancellation clauses with my name as sole authority. Payment reversals processed within the hour of their betrayal. I warned them 3 years ago, I said. I told them if they treated me like a bank, I'd start acting like a banker. You're punishing the whole family. I smiled. No. I'm protecting my investment. And cutting my losses. He raised his voice. They're your parents. They called me a beggar. He didn't have an answer for that. Just turned, muttering something about lawyers and taking this higher. But here's the thing. You can't climb higher than the person who holds the ledger, the contracts, and the backup drive. He walked off, and I closed the door. Then walked to my desk, placed the folder down, and opened a new one. Labeled. Inheritance Audit, Phase 2. By morning, I had emails. 32 to be exact. Some polite, some threatening. All panicked. My mother said, "We didn't mean what we said." Emotions were high. "Can we talk?" My father said nothing, just a forwarded invoice from the venue, now unpaid and demanding restitution. But my favorite was from the family group thread I hadn't been added to in years. A screenshot sent by my cousin. Lana's always been sensitive. She'll come crawling back. She always does. I laughed, then replied to the whole group. Just a reminder, I own the crawl space. And the locks were changed. No response. But later that afternoon, I received a message I didn't expect. From my parents' accountant. He asked if I had time to discuss some irregularities. Said he'd noticed the payments to their beach condo hadn't been coming from their trust, but from an LLC he'd never seen before. Mine. I confirmed it. Then I asked a question I'd been waiting 3 years to say out loud. Have they declared that condo as their asset in annual filings? Silence. Then, they claimed it was an inheritance gift from a private family investor. No documentation. So they'd not only lied, they'd hidden it. Used my generosity to build equity in a property I technically still owned, under my company's name. They weren't just ungrateful. They were exposed. The accountant asked if I'd be willing to sign a declaration for tax records. I said yes, but only after I called my lawyer and asked him how fast we could serve them papers that would make that condo and every unpaid cent legally untouchable. He said, within 48 hours. Perfect. Because now, this wasn't about family. It was about fraud. By noon, the papers were drafted. A cease and desist for slander, misrepresentation, and unauthorized use of funds. And a property reassignment filing, removing any verbal claim my parents had over the beach condo. My lawyer, Reed, slid the papers across the table and said, "They'll try to call your bluff." I smiled. They already did. That banquet was the bluff. The process server confirmed delivery an hour later. And just like that, the family celebration turned into a financial reckoning. That night, I got a voicemail from Mom. Tearful. Rambling. "You're destroying us." Over what? A misunderstanding? You always do this. Always so dramatic. Ah, yes. Dramatic. The word used to silence daughters while they foot the bill. But she wasn't done. If you follow through with this, people will talk. Church, the neighborhood, your father's reputation. It was always about the performance, the appearance of unity, the illusion of a perfect family, the brand of love, not the reality of it. But this time, I let the voicemail rot in my inbox. Because something more important arrived the next morning. A message from my accountant. Subject: account transfer confirmed. Beach condo title finalized. It was done. Legally. Irrevocably. That condo, their prized retirement gift, was now permanently separated from their financial portfolio. And the taxes they dodged? Filed. With interest. Reed emailed me shortly after. "You've closed every door. Want to take it one step further?" I wrote back. Yes. Full audit. Start with the family trust. I want to know where every dollar went since 2017. Because they didn't just call me a beggar. They built their banquet on my back. And now, it was time to bill them for the chairs they never offered me. The trust audit peeled back layers I didn't even know existed. Reed's forensic accountant uncovered everything. $18,700. Withdrawn the week I graduated college. Emergency repairs that turned out to be a new kitchen for my sister. $9,000. Labeled as education expenses, but went to front row concert tickets and a spa weekend for my mother. $34,000. Quietly funneled into my father's antique car restoration, a vehicle he once said was a reward for raising such responsible children. They'd bled that account dry, then still had the nerve to call me the beggar. I asked Reed, "Is this criminal?" He nodded. "Only if you want it to be." But I didn't want jail. I wanted accountability. So we filed a motion. Request for financial recompense plus trust misuse documentation. They had 30 days to respond or settle privately. And that's when the mask finally cracked. An unexpected text came through. From my mother. "I'm scared, Lana. Please don't ruin the family over money. We'll make it right." I stared at it for a long time. No apology. No ownership. Just fear, the only language they ever truly spoke. I responded with one line. "Ruin? You're confusing ruin with reveal." The next day, my sister posted on social media. A long-winded caption under a filtered sunset. "Some people only show up when there's money involved. Glad I know who my real family is." I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Because now, they could say anything they wanted online. But in court, every word had to be proven. Every signature traced. Every dollar accounted for. And suddenly, the girl they once called dramatic had become the one they had to answer to. Their lawyer reached out on day 22. Tone clipped. Language desperate wrapped in legalese. He offered a private settlement, $50,000 in restitution, no admission of wrongdoing, and a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Reed chuckled when he read it. They're trying to seal the cracks before the neighbors peek in. I didn't want money. Not really. I wanted a record. Proof that I wasn't just the black sheep. I was the scapegoat, the silent benefactor, the unpaid lifeline. So we declined. On day 25, my father broke his silence. He came to my office, the one they once called your little side gig, and asked to talk. I didn't get up. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand, pride barely clinging to his shoulders. You've made your point, he said, but you're about to ruin us. Are you proud of that? I looked at him, at the man who once told a room full of guests that my sister was the real success story. And I said, calmly, no. I'm not proud. I'm tired. Tired of funding your life while being written out of your legacy.
He tried to speak.
I raised a hand. You all called me a beggar. So I stopped giving. And suddenly, everyone remembered what I was worth. He didn't apologize. He didn't cry. He just left a folded check on my desk. Blank.
Signed.
I slid it back to him. This was never about your money, I said. It was about mine. When he left, I opened my inbox. A message from the court system. Trust disbursement fraud. Preliminary hearing scheduled. The date was set. And this time, they'd have to show up. Not to celebrate, but to answer. You said. The hearing date spread through the family like a cracked pipe. Quiet at first, then flooding every group chat I was no longer in. They didn't think I'd really go through with it. They never do. They expect silence. They expect shame. They expect the one they pushed aside to keep the peace while they feast. But this time, I wasn't the help. I was the witness. Read, and I prepped everything.
Timeline.
Account statements. Screenshots of messages where I was asked to spot them just this once. All the invisible IOUs made visible. The night before the hearing, my sister messaged me for the first time since the banquet. If you go through with this, I swear I'll never forgive you. No, sorry. No denial. Just a warning, as if my peace required her permission. I didn't reply, because some people don't want reconciliation. They want reinstatement of the version of you who stayed quiet. The courtroom was sterile. My parents sat across the aisle with stiff backs and a lawyer who kept checking his watch. The judge asked simple questions. Reed answered them with math. He projected charts onto a screen, demonstrated how the condo payments came from my LLC, how the trust was siphoned for personal gain, vacations, spa days, cars, all under the guise of family needs. My parents' attorney objected, claimed informal arrangements, said, this is just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But the judge? She wasn't moved. She turned to me and asked, what outcome are you seeking, Miss Hartley? I stood, voice calm, truth on paper. That's all. Let the record match reality. She nodded, gavelled. And with that, my name was no longer just a footnote in their finances. It was the headline. And for once, the room went quiet, without anyone needing to escort me out. You said. They didn't speak to me after the hearing. No calls. No letters. No, we didn't mean it. Just silence, the kind that comes when a performance ends and the lights go out. The judgment wasn't criminal. It wasn't handcuffs or headlines. But it was binding. The court ordered restitution of misused funds, not to me, but back into the trust, where it belonged. The condo's title was permanently transferred to my name. And my parents? They were removed from any future financial access to assets they hadn't earned. Reed called it elegant justice. I called it balance. Weeks passed. My phone stayed quiet, gloriously so. No requests. No emergencies. No guilt-tripped asks for just a little help this month. Then one envelope arrived. No stamp. No return address. Just slid under my door. Inside, a single photo. The family banquet. Everyone dressed in silver and navy, clinking glasses under crystal chandeliers. In the background, blurry but unmistakable me. Captured mid-turn, mid-leaving. The moment they erased me, memorialized by accident. On the back, someone had written, "This was the moment it all fell apart." I held it for a long time, then walked it to the shredder. Because what fell apart wasn't family. It was the illusion of it. The one they built with my money, my silence, my need to belong. And once that illusion burned, what was left behind wasn't ashes. It was freedom. I built a new folder that day. Hartley Foundation. A grant for first-generation women putting themselves through school without family help. The first funding came from a condo sale. Mine. And for the first time in my life, every dollar I gave away was mine to give. She needs positive energy only, okay? Please don't come. That's what my sister said. Not thank you.
Not sorry.
Just that. After I spent $16,000 of my savings to cover her daughter's emergency surgery.
Hi.
My name is Jordan Alara. I'm 32. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because I've never been good at being the villain in their version of the story. I'm the fixer. The calm one. The one they call when it all falls apart. But that night, when I opened the group chat and saw photos of the recovery party, the pink balloons, the matching family shirts, the caption that read, "We're surrounded by love to hearts #FamilyFirst," my chest got tight. They'd invited everyone, even family members I hadn't seen in years. Everyone but me. The woman who paid the bill,
Who cried outside the ICU.
who lied to her landlord to stall rent so her niece could get the procedure in time. And now, I was too negative. I didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't send a passive-aggressive text. I just booked a one-way solo trip. Somewhere warm. No itinerary. No explanation. The next day, I put my phone on airplane mode and walked barefoot down a quiet beach. I breathed, for the first time in weeks, maybe months, and told myself, let them notice the silence. They did. Because 5 days later, the hospital called them about a suspended account. And suddenly, I wasn't just invited back into their lives. They were at my door. It started with a voicemail. "Hi, Jordan, it's me. Just wondering if we can talk about the hospital thing." No apology. No, thank you for paying.
Just the hospital thing.
I didn't respond. Then came the group text. My mom. "Sweetheart, can you give your sister a call? She's overwhelmed." Overwhelmed? Was she exhausted from choosing balloon colors while I negotiated a $16,000 down payment? I stayed quiet. That's when the hospital billing department finally sent the family the second invoice. The first had been in my name. The second, redirected to my sister's account. Apparently, she'd insisted on being listed as the guardian for legal reasons.
Oops.
That new bill? $4,650, due immediately. Because my last transfer had been reversed. I'd called the hospital from the airport. Explained the situation with brutal clarity. I was emotionally manipulated into covering costs. I've withdrawn financial consent. Kindly remove my name from all future correspondence.
They did.
Now it was on her. And she wasn't ready for that. 14 missed calls in 2 hours. 3 different family members trying to guilt-trip me with soft voices and vague shame. Jordan, it's not the time for drama. She's going through so much. Family doesn't keep score. But I did. I'd kept score for years. Every borrowed dollar. Every canceled weekend. Every time I covered rent while they posted brunch photos. Now, the silence was loud. And for the first time, my absence was more noticeable than my presence ever was. I didn't disappear out of anger. I disappeared to see who would notice the weight I'd been holding. And the weight was crashing down on them, fast. Because what came next wasn't just financial fallout. It was a chain reaction. By day 5, it wasn't just my sister calling. It was her fiancé. Then her best friend. Then a message request from a woman I didn't even know. "Hi, Jordan. I'm Ashley. I handle the venue bookings for children's parties in Pinebrook. There's a little issue with the final payment." I stared at the message. A children's recovery party. With a $2,300 catering tab. And balloons. And a magician. All charged, guess where? The same credit card I'd canceled mid-flight. They'd booked it before asking me. Just assumed I'd handle it. Now vendors were demanding payment. The venue was threatening small claims court, and everyone was realizing the Bank of Jordan was closed. Then came the worst blow. A blog post. From the hospital's charity partner. They'd shared a photo of my niece in recovery, smiling, strong, along with a caption. Thanks to the incredible generosity of her aunt, this brave girl got a second chance at life. The post went viral in our local community. And suddenly, I was the center of attention. Not for drama, but for quiet kindness. Local news reached out. My old high school teacher sent flowers. My landlord even wrote me a thank you note with $100 off rent. My sister? She was humiliated. Because in every comment section, people were praising me. Not her. Not her parents.
Me.
She called again, this time sobbing. You made me look like a bad mother. I replied, calm and cold. You did that all on your own. And that's when she whispered the words I'd never heard from her in 3 decades of sisterhood. Please help me. But I wasn't done learning how far they'd go. What I found next in my mailbox wasn't a thank you card. It was a summons. I held the envelope under my kitchen light. Heart thudding. Jordan Carter, defendant. Case no hashtag 8429, CV. Breach of verbal contract. Filed by my sister. She was suing me for emotional damages and financial sabotage, claiming I intentionally canceled payments after agreeing to cover them. Said I caused public embarrassment. Said her daughter's health was at risk because of me. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something deeper. Older. This was what it had always been. Manipulation in designer clothing. I called a lawyer. A pro bono women's legal clinic handled the first consultation. They read the claim and laughed out loud. This'll get thrown out faster than a junk mail coupon. Still, I prepared. I gathered texts, voicemails, the invoice trail, bank receipts, that hospital post, time-stamped and viral. At the hearing, my sister arrived in pearls and crocodile tears. She sobbed about betrayal, about broken promises, about sisterhood. The judge, an older black woman with silver hair and a steel gaze, listened quietly. Then she turned to me. Miss Carter, do you have anything to say? I stood. Not angry, just clear. I didn't abandon my niece. I paid for her life-saving care. What I won't pay for, ever again, is being used. The judge nodded once.
Sharp.
Final. Case dismissed. Plaintiff is advised to reassess her definition of family. My sister burst into tears again, but no one followed her out this time. Not even our mom. Outside the courthouse, the sun hit my face. I had a voicemail from a hospital. A nurse I'd never met. Jordan, I don't know what you did, but your niece's recovery is ahead of schedule. She keeps asking when she'll see you again. That was the only courtroom victory I needed. But part 5? That's when my mom finally showed up, not with apologies, but with a request. Mom showed up on my doorstep 4 days after court. Not crying. Not angry. Just tired. A silk scarf draped around her shoulders like a peace flag. I don't want to fight, she said. I just want to talk. I didn't step aside. I waited. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. A copy of the GoFundMe she'd secretly created for my niece's recovery. One that had raised over $12,000 using my name, my story, and my photo, without my consent. I didn't mean for it to go viral, she mumbled. But people cared. It helped. I stared at her. You raised money using me and didn't tell me? She flinched, then tried to justify. It was for your niece. You said you didn't want to help anymore. I said I wouldn't be used anymore. I cut in. There's a difference. She begged me not to report it. Said it would shame the family. Do you want the world to think we're scammers? I took the paper from her hand, folded it slowly, then said, You already did that part. She cried, the kind of crying meant to soften someone. But I didn't soften. I closed the door. Then I called the GoFundMe support line. Reported the misuse. Attached screenshots. Proof. The campaign was shut down within hours. Donations frozen. Funds redirected to the hospital account in my niece's name. That same night, my niece messaged me. Auntie J, Mom's crying again. But I told her I'm proud of you. You're the only one who shows up for real. I sat with that. With the quiet. With the ache. With the unexpected bloom of peace. But I wasn't finished yet. Because someone else had also used that campaign. And part 6 is when I found out who. It started with an email. Subject line. Urgent, GoFundMe press inquiry. I blinked. Inside was a note from a journalist who'd seen the now-deleted fundraiser. They were doing a feature on viral donation scams and had questions, including why the campaign had linked to a local real estate business as its withdrawal account.
Wait. What?
I read it twice. Then opened the cached fundraiser page. Scrolled to the fine print. And there it was. The connected withdrawal account didn't say my mom's name.
It said,
Sterling View Realty, LLC. My sister's husband's company. Ezra. Of course. I knew they'd always been close. But this? Using my niece's pain. My contribution as a front for their own gain? My hands shook as I opened my banking app. Cross-referenced the wire I'd sent the hospital. I hadn't noticed it then, but the account number wasn't the one I had on file for billing. They'd rerouted the funds. Through manipulation. Through back-end changes. And through me. They had likely paid part of the bill. Enough to keep me quiet. But the rest?
Siphoned.
It wasn't about my niece anymore. It was about laundering compassion into a profit. And suddenly, the party I hadn't been invited to, the unspoken cold shoulders, it all made sense. I wasn't bad energy. I was inconvenient. Because people who pay attention notice where the money flows. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to my sister. Not to Ezra. But to the local district attorney's office, attaching all the evidence. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that builds before a storm. By morning, the silence had cracked. Mom was at my door. No calls. No texts. Just her. Standing there with the kind of brittle smile you wear when you know the truth is catching up. She didn't ask to come in. She walked straight to my kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and sat like she still owned the place. I heard, she said, voice thin, about the letter. I didn't answer. She stared at me, then added, It's not what you think. Ezra made decisions. But we were trying to protect you. You're always so sensitive. I almost laughed. Sensitive? I funded your daughter's surgery. I kept your lights on for 3 years. And you still labeled me bad energy. She stood, the mask slipping. You're going to ruin us. No, I said quietly. You did that when you turned compassion into a con. She opened her mouth, but just then a knock at the door. I didn't have to guess who it was. A woman in a gray blazer stood there, badge visible, notepad ready. Behind her, another officer. Are you Miss Caldwell? I nodded. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding an open financial misconduct case. We have a report of fraudulent fundraising, misuse of healthcare funds, and unauthorized rerouting of bank transactions. I stepped aside. My mother's face drained of color. I didn't, she began. But her voice was already too late. They didn't come to accuse me. They came because I was the witness. The whistleblower. I watched as she sat down on my couch, trembling, answering questions she never thought would be asked. That night, I lit a candle by my window. Not for revenge, but for justice that finally remembered my name. The newspaper never printed my name. Just a quiet blurb buried between weather forecasts and sports scores. Local family under investigation for medical fund misappropriation. Charges pending. But I clipped it anyway. Taped it to the inside of my kitchen cabinet. Not for pride, but for clarity. My sister sent a voice note a week later. It started with sobbing, then begging, then bargaining. She said the party was never meant to exclude me, that I misunderstood everything. That family is messy, but love is real. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because sometimes healing means choosing silence over reopening wounds for someone else's comfort. The hospital called again. This time, to tell me the debt was cleared. A donor, Anonymous, had paid the remaining $4,000. I knew it was Sarah. No message. No credit. Just grace. And so I did what felt right. I took the money I'd saved for next month's rent and booked a tiny cabin by the lake. Just me, a journal, and an old paperback I hadn't touched in years. On the first morning there, I brewed my own coffee, walked outside barefoot, let the light fall across my face like forgiveness. No texts, no guilt, no titles like The Outsider. Just me, the woman who used to beg for a seat at the table, now building her own table, beneath a sky too wide to be owned. As the wind kissed the pine trees and silence wrapped around me like a soft coat, I whispered, "You'll never steal my peace again. They say healing is loud."
But mine?
It arrived in the form of stillness. And for the first time in years, I felt whole.